Okay, so we're going to be talking about pervasive presence. You probably have no idea at this point what pervasive presence is, but literally it's a way of, my way of describing what companies like Apple and Pepsi are doing to really get that presence so you know they're there, and how you apply that to local marketplace so you seem bigger than you actually are. So our goals for today is we're going to talk about, first of all, why a lot of internet marketing is not working or not having the same kind of traction you did several years ago, and how things are changing. And also, too, talking about target audience, the importance of target audience, and talking about what works today when it comes to actually doing the marketing. Then we're going to review digital assets and what kind of role they play and what kind of digital assets you want to use. And then we talk about omnipresence and intimacy and relevancy and how that all works together when you have to start using your digital assets. Okay? So, by the way, if anybody wants a copy of the presentation, I actually have already a copy on my site at mike.marko.com/2018-05-16, so you can download it right there. I also have some content there too to kind of back up some of the stuff I'm talking about today, because it's too much to cram into one session. Okay, so who am I? Well, I didn't start off as someone who did consulting or marketing. I started off as a mechanical engineer. I have a master's degree, and I have a lot of business experience. I went through corporate America, a lot of training, GE and all that stuff. And so I came at things a little differently than the traditional marketer. I look at things differently. I look at systems, processes in place, and in reverse engineering, seeing what people are doing, how I can replicate that, and then how can I make it better. Next slide, please. Okay, so why does a lot of marketing doesn't have the same kind of traction it did? Well, other than the obvious, a lot of people are marketing, and there's a lot of noise out there. What's happening is a lot of times is that people, when they have a website, they don't have for instance, they don't have a clear call to action or CTA. There's a rule that I have. It takes 2 or 3 seconds. If you can't figure out who are you, what's in it for me, and what to do next. If they can't do that in 3 seconds, then they're gone. You've lost them. So you have 2 or 3 seconds now. It used to be 8 seconds, and now with load times, it's about 2 or 3 seconds. So a lot of people miss on that. Another thing too is they may do a few posts on social media, but they don't really cover. It's kind of sporadic. They don't really have the presence they need to have on social media. Another thing too is that they have maybe several social media platforms and things aren't congruent, things aren't driving together, they don't have a consistent message, and they do not have a paid advertising strategy. Right now, especially with the new algorithm changes in Facebook and it keeps evolving, if you don't have a paid strategy on Facebook, you're missing out significantly because of the way the things are set up. Okay, and we're going to be talking about that strategy today. Also, too, is if you only focus on getting traffic to your website, that click, you're also going to be missing out, and we're going to talk about that too. Why when people start driving traffic to their website is actually a mistake. They got to look beyond that. Okay, we're going to be talking about how that all works together, and also too is on target audience, knowing who your target audience is. Okay, so basically what happens is that a lot of strategies now, because the way things are evolving, strategies are out of date. At the same time, you want to do is we're going to talk about how you're going to be applying a lot of techniques that were done before internet marketing came out and how that all works together. So taking a step back in a time machine and applying that techniques today. Okay? So who are you marketing to? Target audience. So I'm going to touch upon this briefly. And the thing is, if you're marketing to everybody, you're marketing to nobody. You're not relevant. Okay? Because you're going to have the wrong kind of messaging. Promoting somebody, say for instance, here I have the example here of an 18-year-old woman and a 70-year-old man. They're going to have completely different messages, different colors, different lingo, everything can be completely different. So if you try to market to both those audiences, you're going to significantly miss out. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. So there's some basics on target audience. I'm just going to touch on it briefly, but it's so important to setting the stage. Going forward is knowing who your target audience is. And I do have a blog post on that link, that reference link I gave you. And I'm hoping that we're going to have another session in the future within this group here. We're talking about having on target audience because it is so important. But basically, it's really knowing who your target audience is. Like not just saying, okay, I want to market to everybody in Cincinnati. Who are they? Know details about them. Okay, for instance, what do they do on the weekend? Do they have kids? What kind of house do they live in? Do they drink Starbucks? What kind of coffee? Coffee. What do they do? Knowing everything about them because you're going to use that for your messaging. Okay, really, really hone that in. Okay, and when you really know your target audience, then you start to really understand, okay, what keeps them up at night? Okay, you have a service or a product that's going to solve a problem. If you don't understand what keeps them up at night, it's really hard to have that relevant message to them. Okay. So the traditional part of marketing, and I mentioned this earlier on with one of the problems that people have in their marketing, is they market in driving traffic to that website. It's all about driving traffic to the website. And that's a huge mistake, because the thing is, it's been shown over and over again, unless it's an emergency and the furnace is out and it's in the middle of winter and the kids are freezing, you might get 2% of people buying on that first exposure. Okay? Typically, it's been shown, if you go to the next slide, oh, sorry, back up one, sorry. It takes 7 to 10 exposures to get that, for someone to take be able to take that purchase. When you go buying TV and shopping around for TV, you typically don't buy it right away. And next thing you know, once you go to that website, you're followed by ads for the next week. So you know the electronics people selling, they know exactly what's going on. Same thing with cars. If you're looking for cars, selling, you're followed by cars for a while. They know that it takes multiple exposures if someone's in the market to buy before they're actually going to pull that trigger. Okay? So it comes down to here is a better approach is when you have multiple targets. You have retargeting in place. And then as soon as they get to that website, you have that follow-up. And on top of that, it's not just that, but also having what's called micro-commitments. Every time you get them to click a link, it's their way of saying nodding. And every time you want them to click, it's saying effectively nodding. I don't know if you ever heard, but sometimes what people do when they do speaking, if they want salesmen will do, if they want you to do something, they nod their head. It's the same thing. Every time you get them to click the link, it's a micro-commitment saying yes, yes, yes. They're more likely to buy, purchase, the more clicks they're going to do. Okay? Same thing, and that could be on social media as well. It could be off and on the website. Okay. Also, too, is that typically what happens is that a lot of people, what they do is when they focus their marketing, you hear leads, and you hear sales. Okay, leads and sales. The problem with that now, okay, is again, the same thing. If you're driving traffic to your website and that's all you're focusing on, you end up losing a lot. You lose 98%. Okay? And if they shop and they can't find you again, they're looking, and they might go to somebody else. So you may have identified as a problem, as a solution, and they might go to somebody else. So if you're focusing purely on sales and lead generation, what's going to happen is that you're missing it overall on that bigger picture. Next slide, please. This is where it comes into that omnipresence and having that follow-up. And this is what Pepsi and companies like Pepsi and Apple do really well. They have the omnipresence. Look at Apple. It's genius. Those Apple stores they have in the malls, that is a perfect example of omnipresence, right? Because you know they're always there. And they also literally, the whole store is set up like a funnel, okay? So that's a great example. Having that presence, Pepsi commercials, right? Those Pepsi commercials you see all the time, different ways. You always know about Pepsi because they're always there, they're always omnipresent. Now imagine taking that concept, put it on a much more local scale, target audience, because you honed in your target audience, you really know who your target audience is, and now you're literally doing that same effect to a smaller audience, so it's a lot less expensive. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so you literally become the Pepsi and Apple in your marketplace. If you're always there to your target audience, and you're relevant, okay, that's when you're always gonna have that presence in mind, that's how you're gonna get those sales. Next slide, please. Okay, so omnipresence. Omnipresence is literally when you're there everywhere, okay, to their target audience. This includes having timing your content, how frequently you're gonna have the content showing up, okay? It is based on frequency, timing, and also what platforms you use. Platforms that use make digital assets, for instance, like might be Facebook. If your target audience is on Facebook or LinkedIn and so on, is knowing where they are and having that omnipresence on that platform. Again, knowing your target audience, you have an idea of where they're gonna be, okay? And then, the thing is, if you just do omnipresence, and you're always there all the time, you're like a mosquito. And if you're there all the time, like constantly, like Tai Lopez, you're like a swarm of mosquitoes, right? So, well, that's the thing is that you can be annoying, right? It can be annoying. Yeah. Next slide, please. Now, relevancy. Okay? Relevancy is having the right offer, the right message to your target audience, because that's where pain points come in. So by knowing who your target audience is, okay, and knowing keeps them up at night, you can have the right message. Next. But the thing is that if you're just posting relevant content, you're not much more than a librarian. If they don't know where you are, who you are, okay, you're not going to have the audience building up because you're not going to be there for them. Okay, nobody's going to know about you. Next slide. So when you combine relevancy and omnipresence, okay, you hit the sweet spot because you're going to be relevant to the right audience all the time. Click again. What ends up happening, you can basically charge what you want because you know you're always going to be there to your target audience. You're actually going to help drive your prices up because you're having the right messaging. Okay, they know who you are, and they're not going to forget about you, and they're going to love your content because it's relevant all the time to them. Next slide. So intimacy. Oops. So intimacy, okay, is basically having transparency and values. Okay, it's where you're having, like you do Facebook Lives. For example, it's one of the reasons doing a Facebook Live now, it helps with that intimacy. So your audience gets to know who you are, connections, you have that when people, you have videos, for example, if people know who you are, they're more likely to buy from you. A lot of times I hear it over and over again with my marketing. They say, I see you on a video, I feel like I get to know you. By the time they talk to you, they feel like they already know you. I hear that over and over again. So that's the intimacy comes in. Oops, back up one. Next one. Oops, I guess I must have jumped. Okay. The thing is, yeah, so I guess one part I missed on here, if you have too much, if it's just focusing on intimacy, okay, what the problem with that is that you seem like you're trying to create best friends and you're not really having a sale. So it's just you build that relationship up to feel like they know you really well, but you don't have that connection for that sale. Okay. So when you combine intimacy and omnipresence, if you can click it, okay, basically it's where you have that tribe mentality. If you, in marketing for a while, you might have heard people building up tribes. That's how they do that. They have the intimacy and they have that always going to be there, and you start building up a big following. Okay. Oops, back up. Just want to make sure I hit the right point. So yeah, so you develop that strong following. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and then you have your intimacy and being relevant combined together. So you're going to be intimate and you're relevant to your target audience. If you click it, okay, that's where you find your ideal client. Okay, because you have that connection, you've expressed your values, they know who you are, but at the same time you are relevant to them. Okay, so that way you have the right product, the right messaging, and they know you, they trust you. Okay, that way you know when they finally do approach you, the customer, if you're a consulting agency, for example, that you know that the people are contacting you, they believe in your values. You guys jive already. They already feel that jive right there, and so you're not going to be attracting necessarily people that don't mesh with your core values. Okay. Next slide. You bind it all together. Okay, you have what I consider the perfect client, perfect connection. It could be a product. This works with products as well. The perfect price and the perfect connection with your audience. Really, you get the ideal client, or you have the ideal connection, or whatever you're trying to promote. Okay. Okay, so you have all three together. You have relevancy, omnipresence, and you have your intimacy. And then you start combining that and start using your digital assets, like your websites and social media and so on. Okay, so let's step back here and look at your digital assets. Traditionally, a lot of people they have a website, most likely. They might do some SEO, search engine marketing, Facebook, and maybe some Facebook retargeting. Okay, they might even have some Google AdWords thrown in there as well. Okay, and so that's probably traditional market. A lot of people are doing, and they might have a little spattering of social media. So instead, let's take a look at this thing here. This is something I draw. Oh, just 1 second here. So typically what happens, I draw this out when I meet with a client or something like that. And what I do is I put the website right in the center. Okay, that's the center of the universe. That's what you control. For instance, just recently with Snapchat, they did some changes in their interface, and the user, people liking the platform just dropped right off. Okay, what you can't control, you need to realize that. Okay, that's where you have to have that website, and I always put that in the center. Then I choose a primary social media. Again, knowing who your target audience is, it might be LinkedIn, it might be Facebook, it could be Instagram, knowing who your target audience is and where they prefer to go, I put that right next to my website, okay? Because I want the two talking back and forth. People either prefer to be on social media or their website, okay? And then I throw on like AdWords or SEO on the outside. Of course, with the retargeting on Facebook. Next slide, okay? And then you throw in some secondary social media platforms. I put them on the outside because they're not my core ones, okay? But I still want to recognize, again, I choose social media platforms and digital assets that are relevant to my target audience, okay? Thing is that you may have, most people might be on LinkedIn, for example, but they are still going to be maybe on YouTube, they might be on Twitter and so on. So evaluate what makes the most sense based on demographics and so on once you've done a study of your target audience. And then what I typically do is because you're always wondering, where do you want to send your traffic? Okay, I send them to my website first, okay, for a lot of reasons. First of all, send them to what I own. Again, your website. If you have your own self-hosted website, you own it, you drive your traffic there, because that's where you can do most of your lead collection. Also, too, it helps with great SEO purposes because you're driving traffic there and it helps raise that ship up, right? Next one, please. And then I also drive it to my primary social media, okay? Because some people prefer to be on social media, and I like to keep them there if they want to be. Again, for SEO purposes, you can make Facebook rank, for example. So you might as well start driving that traffic and raise that ship. Next one. Then I look at other stuff like Google My Business. I look at Bing, Yelp, Reddit, wherever makes the most sense for that target audience. You start building everything else in and driving that traffic into the center. Okay. So this is all the digital assets you look at and having that overall message. So now that you have those, now that you have your messaging, you know you're going to be omnipresent. This helps with overall omnipresent strategy. And actually, next one, click it again, email marketing as well. Don't forget about that. A lot of people, on a side note here, forget about email marketing, and that's a big mistake, okay? And when people who do email marketing, they focus on click-through rates, which in my opinion is another big mistake, because they don't have to open those emails to have that omnipresent strategy. As long as you have the right name, you have your proper name in that email from, and you have a really good subject, they don't have to open it to know who you are. The more you're showing up in your inbox, I'm sure you have examples of it. You have a few of your favorites that you know show up in your inbox, but you may never open their emails. But you know they're always there, and always in the back of mind, remember. Okay, go ahead.
This is a detailed question, Mike, but I'm noticing I get a lot of emails from marketing agencies and the like, and I'm seeing, it seems like more of them, instead of using the HTML type emails with pictures and stuff, are just sending me plain text emails with hyperlinks in them. Is that got any feeling, is that something we should be doing, or one versus the other? Does it matter? Or?
Well, general feeling, and I've done some testing on this, it helps with deliverability. More images you have in it, the more links you have, the more likely it's going to hit spam. So, or Google might put it into the advertising category on their other different filters. So what people tend to do is minimize links and have more text, so that way they can avoid to have that happening. It ends up in your primary inbox as opposed to something else. So, but yeah, so overall, this is developing omnipresence. Now, not all of these are going to be relevant to what you're trying to promote, but having all this idea here and a strategy in place, instead of ad hoc trying to choose your social medias and so on, to have that omnipresence. Next slide. So content marketing. Again, you're going to see here a lot of topics we've talked about in other sessions. This is kind of more of an overall top strategy and how to apply that stuff, in my opinion, how to get that the overall overlaying and traffic, so that way you can get the sales you want to have, that overall omnipresence in sales. So content marketing is important. I'm sure everybody's aware that you have to have content, okay? And the reason you want to have content is to help with that relevancy. And by having video also, too, it also helps with that intimacy. So you want to have the right kind of messaging, the right kind of content for your target audience. Next one here. So again, common content is blog posts and pillar posts, tips, news, memes, infographics, and so on, okay? Again, it comes to relevancy and the having there always be present all the time. Branding and memes and so on. Okay. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that before. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt at any point. Okay. So there's 3 stages of marketing. Okay, so this we've talked about now omnipresence, relevancy, and having all those pieces together and how they fit together. Okay. Now you want to be the relevancy is where the tricky part is. Okay, because what you want to do is you want to be relevant to the right audience at the right stage they are in the marketplace. So there's 3 stages. Oops, sorry. You have traditionally it's called cold traffic, warm traffic, and hot traffic. Okay, so what kind of content do you want to serve that audience? Next slide. Okay. So for cold traffic, these people really, they have a problem that keeps them up at night. Again, that target audience, knowing who your target audience is and what keeps them up at night, that's really, really relevant here because you want to speak to that. Okay. What you want to do is literally what you're doing is you're taking a spotlight, saying, I know your problem. Okay, I understand your problem. There is a solution, and that's what you're doing, is introducing that solution to them. So typically what happens there, next slide, is you want to do is serve content to them. It talks about that root cause of the problem, so they understand it better. They know, hey, he understands, or he or she understands my problem, and they know that there's a solution. so they pay attention. Content also starts to induce who you are, so they get, again, building that on the presence of who you are, that brand recognition. And also, you start talking about the solution from a very high level. Typically what happens too, you want to keep this content relatively short. So that way they're more likely to read it, okay? So you're having something that's really relevant, short, and grabs their attention. Hey, I know they have an answer to my problem. As soon as they do that, again, I'm not going to go in full into doing Facebook ads and AdWords and so on, but this is where the retargeting comes into play. Because as soon as they land on your content, they know it's relevant, tag, they're it. Okay, that's where you start doing your follow-ups. And the trick to doing that there, if you're just kind of really from a high level, on a website address, if you're sending to a blog post or so on, which I love doing, again, that's why I drive traffic to a blog post, the URL, you have a little key. So for instance, if it's about, I don't know, say the widget, okay, the widget's going to solve their problem. If you have widget in that URL, then you can use that for your retargeting. Okay, and that way you know they land on that piece of content, so the next content where you start serving the warm audience, you already know what the problem is. You've already identified, hey, I'm interested in this widget. Now you can have and use that for your retargeting. So next slide. Now we talk about warm traffic. Okay, they're aware there's a solution and they're researching for more information. Okay, so now you've shone that spotlight, say, this is your solution. Now they're going to be in research mode because they're in panic. This has been keeping up at night. They want to solve that problem. This is where it's important to have that retargeting. Again, what you're doing now, as you can see, is you're nurturing them through the entire process. Okay, and that's how you're going to have to follow-ups. It's 7 to 10 follow-ups. It's by basically shining that light on them, saying, hey, here's the problem. Now I'm going to serve you content. It's going to teach you more information about how this solution is going to be relevant to you. Okay. And then for these type of people, you only want to serve more detailed information because, hey, you got their interest. They land on that page, so they want longer content. Okay, this is where videos become more important. Okay, because they're more likely to watch a video unless it's like a 1-minute video early on when they're cold traffic. Now you can start serving videos maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes long because hey, they raise their hand, say I'm interested, start serving them real content. And also too is start taking them, this is where it's really important to start serving them content a step towards the solution. Okay, because now they say I understand you have a solution. If you can imagine you have a scale from A to Z, okay, Z being the solution, A is where they are right now. If you can take them A to B or B to C, now you actually have a fan for life. Okay, that's where it's important to start serving that content. It takes them along that journey. Okay, now you have your hot traffic. These people, they know that you have the answer to their problem. They're going to be, this is where you start having especially if you're omnipresent and you're intimate, this is where you start building a huge following. This is when you see people building up huge followings. It's because they are being more intimate. They're having more intimate videos. They're omnipresent. They're always there. And that's how they build up those tribes, okay? So if you're thinking about, if you're trying to build up a long-term following like Pepsi, right, being relevant to their audience, or Apple, that's what they're doing, but on a much larger scale than what you want to do. So for instance, again, knowing your target audience and so on, it's so much easier to have that follow-up and being in intimacy and knowing, hey, they went to this piece of content, you sort of follow up, that kind of follows up on that, so you're always relevant to that target audience. They know and they trust you, and this is the only point why I recommend nowadays serving webinars. Webinars too early in the process, they say, who the heck are they? Why am I going to spend an hour of my life watching them? But they love and trust you, and you have this huge following. They're more likely, and they're really going to be actually looking forward to that half an hour, hour-long webinar because they want to learn more. And next slide. Okay, so yeah, so you want to do more. This is where we start serving more content that basically promotes you. You're the expert. This is where testimonials come into place because this is now they're coming to that buyer decision. How can you prove to them that, hey, this product is going to work for you? You're showing you know the problem, and that you have that backup story. That could be testimonials, that could be social proof, anything you have articles, publications, and so on. This is where we start serving it because now you basically push them over the edge when they make that sale on that product or service. And the next one, final thoughts. Okay, so just wrap it up. This is why, we already talked about why digital marketing today doesn't work as well because there's so much noise. They have the wrong messaging and so on, where you have to stand out and you have to be relevant to your target audience. We talked about defining your target audience. Knowing who your audience is so important nowadays to any kind of marketing, no matter what you're doing, knowing who your target audience is and having that right and being relevant. We talked about your digital assets and making sure they're all working together. And we talked about going back to the marketing basics. Basically, there's a lot of these techniques are not new. This is stuff that you've been doing for 20, 30, 100 years. It's just now taking it to the digital age and being smart about how everything works together. Okay? And final little thing here about how to find me on social media. Thanks. I know I threw a lot at you. There's a lot in this. I tried to trim it down. That's why I have put it online too, because a lot of stuff is online on that page. Questions?
We've been talking about a business-to-business company, and trying to know your target audience. How do you do that? I mean, when it's an individual, you've got demographics probably tell you what kind of sites they use and so forth. But you got if you're going marketing to businesses, how do you target them?
It comes down to knowing who your decision makers are and where you're in the process, right? For instance, for larger businesses or small businesses, relatively easy. It's usually the CEO or a marketing person or someone who's been tasked with it. For the more mid-sized or larger organizations, you got to understand who is the decision makers and who's also going to be the champion, right? You're going to have a champion, you're going to have a decision maker, and you might even have the person who introduces things to the champion. So you got to understand how that process works in an organization, and it comes through interviewing. Understanding the organizations, your target organizations, and really going to understand them. And
You need to interview.
You have to. You got to do your homework. Like a lot of people gloss over target audience, and it's really a lot of effort to it. That's why people kind of gloss over it, because there's a lot of effort behind it. Yeah, and that could be as easy as talking to somebody and say, "Can I have your opinion on this?" and just networking.
So are you trying to send these different audiences to different pages on your website, or you're just sending them all to the homepage, or what are you doing?
I send blog posts. Okay. Huge into blog posts or videos that are embedded in the blogs and so on. By sending them to your website pages, because you've tagged those URLs and you know kind of the keywords in there, now you know what content they're interested in, and you can use that for further retargeting. Okay. Like for giving an example, I help people with SEO, for example. So I have SEO. Anytime I have SEO, I have a series of ads following up based on educating on SEO. Okay. Any more questions?
This isn't a question, it's a statement. I have a lot of clients that I work with that I'm definitely pushing to do more email marketing and things like that, and it's really hard sometimes to justify and show them ROI all the time on it. And so just having that, even if you just like pop up in the email box, you're being present, like you're showing up, even if like it's not the right time, like you can still test and send it. So I just want to say thank you for that, because I hadn't even thought of it that way.
I had one. I'm working with one of my clients out in Dayton, and he always asks how what he does. He has they do a salon suites concept, and one of the people they talk to, he says, well, how did you come to a decision with us? He says, well, I've been seeing your emails for months. I haven't opened a single of your emails, but as soon as I saw this ad, I went and responded to it, and I contacted you. Yeah. That's all it was. But exactly, and she felt like she knew him already, even though she never. It works like that, yeah, absolutely.
Do you do like pop-ups to get people's emails? It seems like that's getting kind of out of control lately. But
I hate pop-ups.
Okay. Yeah.
Unless it's maybe an exit pop-up, maybe I might use. For the most part, it just comes down to giving reasons for the opt-in. So, for example, if you go to my, I think on my one for the target audience, you see I actually have an exercise sheet for it that you can use for it. Yeah. You have to put your email in to get it. Okay. Right. So you entice them to. It's more that. Yeah. Type, yeah.
Good. Yeah. I prefer that rather than the annoying.
Well, absolutely. And keep in mind too, with retargeting, with the way Facebook works and AdWords works, you don't really need their email per se in order to get that retargeting. So it really helps. So, yeah. So either way, you've got them. Oh, yep.
I mean, SEO is kind of a niche to be successful at, because they change it about every hour.
Yeah, it does change.
Is Google is that what you focus on, SEO for Google?
I do SEO for Google. I'm pretty good at it. But what also too is there's ways that for businesses, Google My Business is probably the easier way, the direct line of sight to getting yourself found faster. if you do Google My Business properly, it kind of gets you ahead of a lot of people.
What tips would you recommend on becoming better at SEO?
That's a tough one. It really comes down to is
somebody that's trying to really break into that, trying to learn it.
It comes down to content writing. It really comes down, for the most part, other than there's a lot of philosophies that comes to SEO and what works and what doesn't. But it ultimately comes down to writing good content.
Okay,
And
that's the biggest thing that you're saying.
oh, it's huge. Like, no matter what you're going to do with good content, you're going to win either way, because you can serve it to your audience. You're going to be relevant to your target audience. And with a little bit of thought in your keywords, you have a chance of ranking it, especially longer tail keywords. And then this week start writing, because as you drive traffic and Google realizes you have relevant content, it's always watching. That's probably your best way of getting started initially into SEO. It does, yeah. Especially if you're paying for the content driving, right? People that are relevant, they're going to love it. So.
Do you have a blog?
No.
Oh yeah.
Get yourself a blog.
Well, don't get me on my soapbox on blogs.
and then be a guest blogger.
Yeah, guest blogging works.
Okay.
It takes a lot of time and effort to write a lot of good content, a lot of blog posts.
It does.
We've been wondering about, got an idea called 3 for 1. And it would be take a subject matter and go find 3 articles or blog posts about it out on the internet that are good, and kind of summarize the common points and the differences of those 3 as my blog post. Now, and tell people, if you want to learn more, go to these posts.
That works. And if a way you want to keep on top of things like stuff like that, you just use Google Alerts for keywords, and you'll get the most relevant content served right to you.
And they get really nerdy and see all the other websites that are linking back to those 3 posts, and then you reach out to those websites and, hey, my content's cooler, you should link back to mine instead. Because I said all this and this.
Well, what I'm thinking too is if I'm helping those 3 sites get customers, maybe they could reach out to them and say, hey, would you guys link to my posts? Do it the other way.
Mm-hmm.
People also like resource guides, 47 things you need to know about SEO, or, the top paying 38 markets for writers, or
Yeah. And they say to have odd numbers
it was like that 47 or 38.
Tested that, I'm really curious.
I don't know, but Neil, I went to a course with Neil Patel for like a day-long course, and he recommended odd numbers. So.
Yeah.
50's dead.
Yeah, I think it looks like you really researched it,
but
Most things, some things are, yeah.
Did you test that?
Well, in art and visual art, 3 or odd numbers are much more appealing than. So it's probably just taking that.
Psychological kind of,
So I see you have a personal website and a business website. I hadn't really thought about doing that before. How do you use each of those, and why do you have to?
For me, it's more of my longer-term strategy for me. So I have my business, which is a separate entity. Eventually, as it grows larger, I'll have my own CEO. So it's kind of looking at separating them eventually. But plus, too, the great backlinks for each other, too. So it serves a dual purpose. You remember that circle chart that I showed, that big circle? Well, what I do is often I'll put another website on the outskirts and then draw its own circle around it. That's kind of what I did for myself. So now you have, like, I call them, it's we're creating literally like a net on the internet, because you create that one net and then you have another website and you draw it around there. So people, for instance, if they have multiple products, like big products, maybe 3 or 4, I suggest having each one have their own website and then your mothership, and then doing the same kind of strategy.
Kind of like what links that they're getting, and see, hey, can I create any sort of content that can like match what they're writing about, or even reaching out to those like webmasters themselves, and just kind of looking at your competition. And I think it's definitely very, very important. It's one of like the top like SEO regarding backlinks is to know your competition and how they got maybe to that first spot, second spot. FAQs are pretty big within the legal industry. I mean, talk about like search in general. As we come to the internet wanting answers to our questions, you really want to nerd out, you can do like it's called schema markup, where you can put certain code into your website that makes Google easiest for it to read your website and get that answer to that question as soon as possible. So you can even get these what's called answer cards to your questions. And I mean, like, that's just going down like a whole nother thing of like how to just work Google to your will. So there's a lot of different ways about you know, how to make SEO work, and just, the more research you do, the better. And it's always changing. That's what's crazy about it. So it's great.
Based on industry too.
Exactly.
Like the rules that work for law firms aren't going to work the same for writers.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
it's very different.
Yeah.
Of course, resources would probably work for almost anyone.
Definitely.
But if I'm researching a plumber because my toilet's leaking, I don't really care if there's resources on the website. I want to see that they have a phone number I can call, that they have good Google reviews.
Are they available now?
And they're available now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all very different. Mm-hmm.
Any more questions?
And we will post the presentation on the meetup, so if you guys are interested on catching up with all this and all the links that are within this presentation, following them back, Mike.Marko here. And, we almost got those two first
I get that
days.
a lot. I get that a lot. Yeah.
So this will definitely be posted on the meetup. And just a quick reminder that next meetup will actually be me at Queen City Radio for a drink social, so there won't be a guest speaker, but there will be alcohol. So.
When is that one?
June. So
Third
it's
Wednesday.
always the third Wednesday of
Yeah.
each month. So June 16th. maybe.
June 20th.
Not even close.
I
Okay.
heard Google makes this calendar app.
Yeah. Works much better than my brain.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Cool. Great. Well,
Thank you.
like I said, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thanks.